Now, it's worth looking for a moment at Joseph Goebbels, one of the evil geniuses of the Nazi regime. Goebbels was as close to Hitler as anybody could be. Goebbels was a combination of Richard III and Harvey Weinstein. Richard III, in that he was born with a deformity, a severe club foot that he dragged behind him, and for which he was mocked as a kid, as a young man. He was on nobody's list as being a good a husband to be. He was on nobody's list to be a success. He had tried as a playwright, couldn't get a play produced. He tried as a novelist, failed. He tried as so many things. He was on the verge of suicide. And then he discovered Nazism. And what Goebbels wanted came about, first of all, because these guys, you give them a uniform, give them a bit of power, and look out, which we're going to show you a photograph. Monica's going to hit that photo if you can get the first one, Monica. That's a small photo. You can't see much. But that was the Joseph Goebbels that the world knows. The monster in the uniform, and he made speech after speech. He controlled what people read, what they saw, and everything else. And then, but the one thing he wanted more than anything, a failed playwright, a failed novelist, a failed everything, he wanted the movie business, because the movie business in Germany was enormous. It rivaled Hollywood. Louis B. Mayer was envious of the German film studios that turned out great producers, people like Billy Wilder, F.W. Murnau, Fritz Lang, Metropolis, The Blue Angel, on and on. Goebbels wanted that. So in the next one we're going to see, and here's Goebbels after he took over the entire German movie industry. He ran it all, and he would show up, and he was the god, and nobody dared go against him. He went so far as to approve pages and scripts, and he had enormous control over everything else. He ran all the newspapers and everything else. So let's go to the next one. He would go to the premieres where they would fawn over him. If you look carefully at that photograph, you'll see in the background a few Nazi uniforms. Goebbels was the man. Darryl Zanuck, Louis B. Mayer, Jack Warner, they could only envy the power that Goebbels had in the movie. And then Goebbels had such power that this is a very bizarre photograph. For those of you who have seen my Facebook page, you'll know what this is. Goebbels could order the most astonishing things. In this case, there was a movie being made called The Great Love with an actress named Zara Leander, and partway through the filming, a long film shoot, Zara Leander got a liking for chocolates and chocolate cake and gained an enormous amount of weight. So they had a real problem. What do? They had this big scene where they had to have her on stage in front of all these chorus girls, and she had gained too much weight, and they didn't know what to do. So the old thing about either you raise the bridge or you lower the water, somebody came up with a bright idea. Put 6'6" men in drag. Not just any 6'6" men in drag. What you're looking at is the SS Adolf Hitler Leibstandarte, one of the most feared SS troops in the German army, which Goebbels pulled from the battlefield and ordered to dress in wigs and gowns and put them behind Zara Leander on the stage to make her look smaller. And believe me, the shot was very short. But that is an SS troop in drag that was pulled out of warfare for this movie. So, if we go on, while I was researching the early days, this is a tale behind the curtain, early days of researching the Gossip Columnist, I knew I needed to trek through some of Goebbels' life, as wretched as it was. And I hired a guy in Berlin, a former British intelligence agent, a guy who had been involved in espionage in the Cold War, who had been involved on both sides of the Iron Curtain, had retired, lived in Berlin, married to a German woman, and when he was bored, he would take tourists on a kind of a tour of the Third Reich or all the tourist stuff. I met him and I gave him a list of stuff I wanted to see. And he looked at the list and said, we'll never get to this, I'll never get to that, never get to this. The one that he said was impossible to get to was Goebbles' home in the forest, deep in the Berlin woods. For those of you who know Berlin, you'll know that it is an amazing city. It's got the urban part of the city, and then there are vast parts, forests and lakes around it that are still technically called Berlin. Goebbels wanted a home in the forest that to where he could take these movie starlets and do with them what he wanted. So Monica, can we go through? This is the road, and we came to this place. We went past verboten, nick this, nick that. You can't go in, you can't do this. We kept going and going, and we finally came to a place with all these do not enter signs all around, forbidden this, forbidden that. And we came to Bogensee, which was a Goebbels home that he had built, where he would take the movie starlets in the middle of a deep, deep forest. And we walked up to the door. I walked up to the door, and no entry this, no entry that, and pushed the door. The door opened.
Whoa.
And this is the inside of Goebbels' lair in the deep woods. Obviously, it would have had furniture in there at the time, but this is where he would bring these women and sometimes hold receptions for Hitler if he wasn't doing the rest of it. And can you go to the next one? And you'd walk through this place, and I don't know if any of you believe in ghosts or not, but you would if you were in this place. It was as heavy, psychologically, emotionally heavy, ugly place. And I really wanted to see it, and I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. But in order to write this thing, and in order, it's an artistic type thing, but I needed to go there and feel this. So that was Goebbels, and I just want to finish off, Jonathan. Give me one more second on this, and because Gossip changed the course of World War II in some ways. Gossip, just before in the Second World War, in 1938, the stuff that was being pumped out about Goebbels was so incredible, it was starting to affect how people perceived the Nazis. They were starting to mock them, especially Goebbels, because he was philandering in such an incredible way. There's a story, which is believed to be true. He had an affair with a married actress, and the husband punched Goebbels in the nose, which normally would be a death sentence. You would be shot on the spot. But Goebbels was so mortified that it might get out, and the circumstances would get out, that the guy, nothing happened to him. But it was becoming what Bella in the book, and in reality, it was becoming so extreme, and Goebbels' wife was having a complete meltdown. Hitler had to play gossip, or had to play marriage counselor. Hitler called in Goebbels and his wife, and Hitler ordered Goebbels to stop his philandering, stop this gossip that was going on around them. And Hitler at the time was in the midst of planning to invade Czechoslovakia, and he couldn't have all this stuff flying around. And he basically told Goebbels that he was really in the doghouse. This was a disgrace what happened. This was appalling. So Goebbels was mortified because he was going to lose access to the man he idolized, Hitler, to the man who he viewed as his mentor, as everything. And Goebbels was forlorn. His diaries, which he kept, incredible diaries, are full of angst and chagrin and regret. He was forlorn. But history stepped in a weird way that both Jonathan and I have intersected in a literary sense. There was an event that happened in Paris, which I won't tell you any more about it right now, but it was an event that Goebbels saw as his chance to get back in the good graces of Hitler. Goebbels then took this event and broadcast it as an outrage against the German people, as an outrage. Hitler heard of Goebbels and he approved of what Goebbels was doing. And it became the hideous, the murderous, the violent, the seething national moment of sheer murder and mayhem known as Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, where Germans across Germany suddenly formed this violent mob, attacked every Jew they could find, broke into stores, trashed all the glass windows that saw the night of the broken glass, looted every German store they could find, and murdered Germans on the street. It was the true face of Germany in November 1938, the true face of Nazism, which they've been trying to finesse a little bit. This is what came through. And it came through because one man was trying to make up for his sense of chagrin over being caught as a philanderer and being mocked and being scorned by the people he admired. History can be changed over and over by the foibles, the stupidities, and the insecurities and the rapaciousness of one individual. That Kristallnacht it can be argued that that was one. Now, Jonathan, as it was mentioned, has written many, many books. He's regarded as a literary treasure in Los Angeles for having written books about the ancient world, about the Bible, and many other things, including a book that I didn't know, or I didn't know, but I'd forgotten he had written, which relates to what happened, the event in Paris that created Kristallnacht, that gave Goebbels the excuse to go on this rampage, which became Kristallnacht. So over to you, Jonathan.
Well, there are some really startling similarities in the stories we tell. First of all, the incident that Martyn is referring to was the assassination in Paris in 1938 of a consular official in the German embassy in Paris. His name was Ernst von Rath. And the assassin was a 17-year-old Jewish teenager, a refugee from Poland. Then that's Herschel Greenspan. Herschel Greenspan, his parents and his sister and brothers were trapped in Germany and could not get out. And Hitler decided to do in Germany and Poland what Trump is trying to do in the United States. He arrested 12,000 Jews off the streets of Germany, and he trucked them to the Polish border, and he pushed them across the border. And the Polish army pushed them back, and they were stuck in winter in no man's land between these two countries. And Herschel in Paris was distraught over this. This is years ahead, or a few years ahead, of the Holocaust, although this event is sometimes characterized as the day the Holocaust began. Herschel Greenspan bought a gun, went to the German consulate in Paris, asked to see the ambassador. He was ushered into the third consul's office, and he said, in the name of the persecuted Jews of Poland, here is my message, and he shot von Rath to death. He was arrested for murder in Paris and held in Paris. A trial was prepared. Events overtook this case. World War II broke out. Germany invaded France, conquered France. And one of the first things that happened was that a special action squad was sent into France to get Herschel Greenspan out of the French prisons and back to Germany for a show trial. And this was Goebbels' project. The Kristallnacht was a fabricated pogrom. It was a state-sponsored pogrom, not spontaneous. But Goebbels wanted to style it as an upwelling of righteous anger by the German people against the Jews for the death of this consular official at the hands of Herschel Greenspan. And it was a well-prepared pogrom. They had painted signs that the mob could carry that said, "Revenge for von Rath." Now, as it happens, Hitler was displeased, and also Goering, very displeased at all the damage in the streets and the damage to buildings. And another irony of this event is that it may have been the tipping point for the Nazis to decide not to persecute Jews with medieval-style pogroms in their own streets, but to take them by train to isolated places and murder them en masse. And so that's the and Goebbels was the mastermind of the show trial.
He actually flew to Munich. He saw this as his chance to be back in the limelight again, and he needed this because of how he had been so shamed before by Hitler, who was just going to throw him out, cast him out. So that's basically probably more than you had expected to learn about German history right now. But I'm going to suggest we throw it open for questions.
Let's do it.